Director of Communications for the Dairy Business Association and Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative, and I'm speaking with you today from Wisconsin. In a minute, I'll introduce you to our spokespeople. Each will have some remarks, and then we'll open things up to questions. To ask a question, you can type them into the chat box if you're on video, or ask them by way of audio. Each of you should have received an embargoed press release within the past 90 minutes or so. I appreciate you holding on to that until after the presentation. And also a reminder to please mute your phones or your computer audio when not speaking. And finally, we do plan to wrap up the call at 12:45. Thank you, and we'll begin. So, after discussions about ways in which the federal milk marketing orders could be improved, 4 groups, the Dairy Business Association, Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative, Minnesota Milk, and the Nebraska State Dairy Association, are proposing reforms to the fluid milk pricing system. The unprecedented price disruptions that were caused by the pandemic, including record high producer price differentials, have drawn increased attention to the need for changes. The National Milk Producers Federation has proposed changing the Class 1 pricing formula and is pushing the USDA to hold a national hearing to address the issue. The representatives from our 4 groups are here today to announce an alternative proposal. Now I'll turn things over to Amy.
Good afternoon. I'm Amy Penterman, President of Dairy Business Association and a dairy farmer in West Central Wisconsin. In our discussions, we centered on 3 core goals in reforming the Class 1 formula. We feel it's critical that any such reform, number 1, provides stability to the pricing system without distorting the markets. Number 2, reduces the likelihood of negative producer price differential. And 3, makes producer risk management more effective in future crises. The NMPF proposal does none of these things. Instead, it merely attempts to claw back lost revenue in the short term and leaves larger problems unsolved. Our organizations prefer sensible changes that will last for decades. Now I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you, Amy. My name is John Holyvold. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Dairy Business Association and Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative. Our proposal that we're offering today, which we call Class 3 Plus, ties the Class 1 skim milk price to the Class 3 skim milk price plus an adjuster. The initial adjuster would help farmers to recoup revenue lost in 2020, but the proposal is ultimately revenue neutral and works to be equitable for farmers, processors, and consumers. After an initial period with a set adjuster of plus 36 cents, our proposal calls for an annual readjustment based upon market data so that it can adapt to changing times. Finally, we are also proposing an end to advanced pricing, which contributed to the negative PPDs that farmers experienced in the last year. And now I will turn it over to Lucas Sjostrom.
Thank you, John. Hello, I'm Lucas Sjostrom, Executive Director at the Minnesota Milk Producers Association and live on a dairy farm in central Minnesota. The Class 3 Plus proposal provides for long-term reduction in the likelihood of negative PPDs and would create more pricing stability in the future. Tying the Class 1 price to the Class 3 price will also make it less likely that cheese plants will find it necessary to depool, which was another source of the pricing challenges we started facing last year in 2020. Our proposal looks to the future, beyond just the next 2 years. Our proposal would make lasting changes to the milk pricing system that will limit negative PPDs in the future and the possible negative impacts from future crises. I will now turn it over to Chris.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Boskay. I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska State Dairy Association. And as we all know here, the national milk producers have publicly called for an emergency hearing by the USDA. And having that federal milk marketing order hearing is not a decision that we need to take lightly. The hearing itself could have some inherent consequences and could result in some counterproductive changes or even the end of the federal milk marketing system altogether. Our groups felt that it's imperative that if we're going to have a hearing, and National Milk's forthcoming formal request makes that more likely, we should make lasting and beneficial changes that will leave us with a better system overall. And that is specifically what our Class 3+ proposal aims to do. We owe it to our customers and to our farmers and our processors to get this right.
Thank you, Chris. Now we'll open it up to questions. Again, if you have a question, you can enter it into the chat box or unmute yourself and ask.
Jamie, it's Larry at Brownfield Ag News. Have you proposed this to NMPF to see if they have any comments on your plan?
Larry, I can probably take that. This is John Holyvote. Thank you for the question. We have touched base with National Milk in the past about this issue more broadly. We have not been in communication with them since they announced last Friday their plans to move forward. We already were working together to talk about issues surrounding both the Class 1 pricing formula and more broadly FMMOs in general. So that process was already ongoing when we saw the National Milk proposal.
Scott Schultz in. How about on the political side? Has anyone been in contact with congressional leadership on the dairy side of things to see what the reactions might be on such a proposal?
I can, speak from our association that we're in regular contact with federal officials and have made them aware that we were beginning to work on this. As John emphasized, and we all emphasized, we were not necessarily looking for a hearing. We think there's more work and more studying to do. But if there is a hearing, we wanted to make the best for future changes possible. So we haven't had specific discussions, at least in Minnesota, with our congressional representation about these exact issues. But I know that USDA officials have already just commented on the future of the hearing, and so I know that federal officials are being made aware as we speak.
And the same would be true of our group as well. We've had general discussions about this problem, the problem of negative PPDs, the price issues that we had. Obviously, those things have been discussed for some time with lawmakers, but this specific proposal has not been made public prior to today.
And same here in Nebraska. We've made our congressional delegation well aware of the marketing and pricing issues that we've experienced here in Nebraska, and so we're in direct communication with them on a lot of things. This is definitely one of them that they're aware of and consciously awaiting for which direction makes sense for us.
This is Joel Hastings with Dairy Business News. I've got two questions. One is there any projection on how this might impact Class 4 prices? And number two, Maren Bozic has recently presented some information encouraged by your organizations. Has he been helpful in drafting this proposal?
John or Lucas?
Yeah,
answer that.
Go ahead, Lucas.
Thanks for the question, Joel. As you know, we've been working with Dr. Bozic for a long time, but importantly, this proposal is the conglomeration of his ideas, many other ideas, and our dairy farmers have told us as staff, Amy being one of them on the phone here today, that this is the best proposal going forward. So in some sense, we've had lots of ideas from lots of economists, including Dr. Bozic, and we hope that when we are now making this public, those economists turn around and look at it and poke holes and exalt what's good, and we make the best product for dairy farmers. On your Class 4 question, that was something that we all asked ourselves repeatedly, and we believe the Class 3 plus proposal we've put forth is revenue neutral overall, but also not an advantage or disadvantage for any particular class in the long run. So we're proud of that, which is why we think it's good for processors, consumers, and dairy farmers.
Thank you.
Dave Natsky from Progressive Dairy. Can you talk about how these changes improve risk management and hedging opportunities for dairy producers?
John, is that something you would
Sure.
like to take?
I mean, I can answer that for you, Dave. I mean, it's going to create a situation where we have a lot more price stability once again. So from that aspect, the direct tying of Class 1 and Class 3 is going to allow farmers to use both market-based risk management tools more effectively. We also hope that some of the disruptions in coverage from federal risk management tools that we experienced in 2020 because of basically the inversion of the classes will be greatly reduced. So not only do I think this will help farmers who are using the markets to do their risk management, but it'll also help the folks who are using federal programs. And obviously a whole host of farmers use both. So overall, we do see this as something that's advantageous for people who are trying to better manage their risk going forward.
Other questions?
Can you talk about, are you talking about eliminating advanced price announcements? I haven't read through the whole thing so far yet, but can you discuss that?
That is correct. There would still be reported prices, but that's something that we see used in other commodities and other spaces beyond dairy. So that is something that USDA would do instead. Part of our motivation for that too, just to be clear on why we're going that route, and it's in the materials you were provided as well. If we look at the analysis of the negative PPDs we saw across all orders in 2020, we can see a decent proportion of all of those are directly tied back to the advanced pricing system. So in doing so, we will reduce the likelihood of future negative PPDs.
Thanks.
To clarify, if you have Class 3 plus, that would eliminate Class 3 so that you would not give the producers or the processors the option of one or the other, right?
No, Larry. So all we're doing is we're tying the ultimate price for Class 1 to what the price is for Class 3. So in essence, the Class 3 price becomes the primary mover of the Class 1 price. So they'll both still exist. They're just going to have a linear relationship going forward that's more predictable and stable.
Thanks.
Others?
There have been criticisms, Scott again, there have been criticisms over the years about the driving force that a few trades of cheese and butter on any given day, how they drive the price. How will that all be affected? And is that going to be stopped, or how do you guys see this?
I don't, thanks, Scott. Lucas with Minnesota Milk here. So I don't think we're, weaving into that. Obviously, we've heard that argument, but we're trying to stay focused here, federal order hearing, Class 1 pricing, and making that better. And obviously, the issues you bring up are related to that, but in the letter of the law and what would potentially be changed here through a hearing, I think that's something to consider. But we're just trying to make the price discovery mechanism better which of course means selling the most product at the right price that our dairy farmers can. So I think that's our overall goal, just making price discovery better. Some of that affects your issues. Some of it probably doesn't affect the issues that you put up.
Dave Natsky again. National Milk's proposal seeks to, or their request, it sounds like, seeks to limit the federal order hearing to Class 1 scope. Is yours in that same category, or would it require an expanded hearing?
It is in the same category. Now, our focus, while all these items still address the Class 1 price, is slightly more broad than what National Milk has put forward so far. But we're still not talking about a hearing where, with a very broad scope, if a hearing is held at all.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, hi. Chris Torres, Farm Progress. I have a question here. I'm from the Northeast. In this proposal, do you sort of, what do you think the impact would be in a market that is mostly Class 1 and Class 4 like we have here in the Northeast?
Again, thank you, as a Christian, Lucas Shostrom with Minnesota Milk. Again, our aim, we were very sensitive to that, and I think we need to be, as USDA federal order hearings are, sensitive to processors, consumers, dairy farmers, and everybody else. And we really aimed to be revenue neutral as we were laying out all the proposals and options here in a very short manner, and also, not any significant advantage or disadvantage to any class. So in the long run, we believe that there is not that a significant advantage or disadvantage to any class. And in the long run, we believe this is revenue neutral. So what we're looking for, again, is best price discovery. And so Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, West, they're all going to have input and discussions here. And our goal was to find something that works best for the nation's federal marketing orders, which of course not all milk is in, but significant percentage is.
Hi, this is Chad in Nebraska. Has there been any research at looking back on this? If this had been in place in the last year or the last 2 years, how would that have affected farm gate prices or anything like that?
Yeah, Chad, this is Chris. I can't get really into some direct detail on that, but we did have a pretty good research portion of this process where we looked back and evaluated how it would affect basically our farmers' pay price in Federal Order 32, which is where Nebraska is, and then across other federal orders as well. And our proposal does a really good job at eliminating the negative PPDs and basically eliminating the volatility in the milk price. And we're really proud of how our proposal does that, and excited to, champion it moving forward.
Scott, following up on that question, how much did the past year drive the development of this plan versus if the pandemic hadn't occurred? Is this something that might have been thrown on the table, or is timing everything here?
Amy, would you like to answer that?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. The pandemic brought out to light what could happen with, when milk prices and when it hit last year. So this was unprecedented times, but it did discover some areas that needed improvement. So we hope that we don't ever have to have a scenario like that again, but by making these changes and implementing them going forward, hopefully to level out the playing field so we don't have to experience that again.
Do we have any other questions?
Larry here. From your perspective, are you better off if NMPF does not get their hearing?
John, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that, Larry. I don't know that that's true. Again, our baseline position here is that we wanted to look at this issue and other issues with the order, regardless of hearing timing. Now, because of their proposal, we might be moving forward with a hearing sooner than we had anticipated, and maybe sooner than we had actually desired. But ultimately, the issues that are at the core of this proposal, they're important and they need to be addressed. Now, whether that happens in the near term or a slightly longer time period, we are hopeful that there's solutions that can be put forward and actually implemented. So we'll leave it to USDA to determine whether or not the benchmark's been made for having a hearing. We just want to make sure that we are thinking carefully about what would be best for farmers long term if and when the opportunity comes to present that.
This is Jamie Mara. I wanted to interject. Maybe Amy and Chris, you could answer this question, but what is it that you really want the farmers in your organizations to know about this program? Maybe we'll start with Chris.
Sure. Yeah. So the big thing that our main priorities going into this this research and development process was we wanted it to be fair, and we wanted to be able to lock in milk and be able to forward contract. And this Class 3+ situation allows for our farmers to do just that. And so we think that based off of the research that we've done and the information that we've gathered, that this is the best path forward for, speaking on Nebraska's side, the best for the Nebraska dairy farmer. And if you look at it, it really is one of the best options, or if not the best option for the nation as well.
This is Amy. I'll echo those words also. And it's not, so many times when we get groups together, you might focus on one area, but this takes into a broad scope of farmers across the nation. And so we need to do what's best for all. We're not going to get it perfect. And, as Lucas said too, poke holes in it. Let's try and perfect it. But also, as a dairy farmer myself, being able to use risk management, what's out there available to us, but knowing that our floor is our floor, that negative PPDs don't come into play when we thought that we might have had a floor, and then all of a sudden we have more taken off. We need to eliminate some of that volatility, and we need to get moving forward. And not only is this a short-term fix, this goes into our future generations that we need to look at also. So not looking back, we can't make up for what happened last year, but we certainly we can learn from it, and now we can move forward and hopefully with a better opportunity ahead of us.
Chris Torres here again from American Agriculturist and Farm Progress. Again, I realize that creating a system that makes every single dairy farmer happy is difficult and maybe even impossible. But I'm just curious. I mean, did you, as I look at this, I mean, this is obviously groups in the Midwest that helped create this. I mean, was there any outreach to any farm groups in the West, California, any outreach to groups in the Northeast, of course, right from, or anywhere else? Did you actively seek outreach with them or with dairy farmers in those areas when you were considering this?
Hi, Chris. Lucas again from Minnesota Milk. Yes, we have talked to groups. We have talked to farmers. Not anticipating this hearing, we reached out to every breed association and state trade association nationwide to talk about the issues. As we said a little earlier, this is the first unveiling of Class 3+ right now. However, we had talked about kind of the principles and tenets and core situation behind what we were proposing to people on, I would say, both coasts and all regions of the country. We didn't talk to 35,000 dairy farmers, of course, because we aren't going to make 35,000 happy, but I feel like we did do some homework and trying to figure out what major holes we had, and tweaked and changed and found some of them, and I think have an improved product due to that outreach. But all that being said, I mean, this is the first kind of public unveiling of a complete Class 3+ package, more than just conversation.
Okay, so is it safe to say that this is sort of a, I guess you could say, a fluid document, meaning that based on feedback you get from other organizations or other farmers in other regions, that there might be some tweaks here and there, or is this the final product?
I'd say we feel pretty good about it, but I don't know about others. I mean, we analyzed it and studied it, and I'm sure one of our major issues or major things to compare against was the proposal from National Milk. So that's really what moved us forward faster. We're always open to something that betters the situation.
Anyone have anything to add to that?
No.
Any last questions?
What's next?
Well, Larry, we're going to continue those conversations. So the same ones that Lucas already referenced that were ongoing, they continue today and they will well into the future. So we're going to continue to monitor if and when a official request is made by NMPF to USDA for a hearing, and then we'll decide if and when we have to engage with that process. But in the meantime, it is about having those conversations with our counterparts in other states, in other regions, those folks on the processing side as well as on the farming side. All that work lies ahead of us.
Right. If we have no other questions, we'll wrap it up. Just a reminder, we will have a recording of the press conference. Probably we'll try to do that within the hour. You have an embargo press release, but you'll be seeing another one come through as part of the full distribution, and you'll see contact information on there as well for follow-up interviews. So feel free to pursue those. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.